They didn't leave. So why does it hurt like they did? Chapter 1. Avoidants don't leave you. They just disconnect emotionally. Okay, listen. I want to start this like I would with a close friend, not a lecture. Here's what I think. Most people don't get stuck on avoidance because they were abandoned. They get stuck because the avoidant never fully leaves. They're there, but not really. Gone, but not completely. And that half in, half out thing? Yeah, that's what messes with your head. You won't believe this, but if avoidance actually left cleanly, most people would heal faster. It's the emotional disconnection without physical disappearance that keeps you trapped. Can you imagine that? So let's clear this up first. Avoidants don't usually walk away like, "I'm done, goodbye." That's rare. What they do instead is quieter. They text less, share less, feel less, invest less, but they stay reachable. And that's the problem. Because your brain goes, well, they're still here. So maybe there's still something. That maybe is poison. This is not the same as leaving. Leaving is obvious. It has an ending. Disconnection doesn't. Disconnection feels like mixed signals, emotional crumbs, random warmth followed by cold, silence that isn't quite silence. You're not grieving a breakup. You're grieving confusion, and confusion is way harder to process. Here's what's actually happening inside an avoidant. Avoidants don't disconnect because they stop caring. They disconnect because closeness triggers threat. So when emotional intensity rises, their system goes, too much. Shut it down. But here's the twist. They don't want to lose you either. So instead of leaving, they turn the volume down. They reduce intimacy instead of ending the relationship. From their side, that feels safe. From your side, it feels like slow emotional starvation. Why this feels worse than being dumped? Let me ask you something. Which one hurts more? Someone saying, "I don't want this," or someone saying nothing, but acting different? Exactly. Silence with presence messes with your nervous system. Because you're constantly scanning, did I do something wrong? Are they pulling away? Should I wait? Should I talk? Should I give space? You're never settled. And that's not accidental. Avoidants disconnect to regulate, not to punish. This matters. Most people take avoidant disconnection personally. They think, they don't care? They replaced me. I wasn't enough. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. Avoidants disconnect to regulate themselves, not to hurt you. They're not thinking, "I'll slowly destroy this person." They're thinking, "I need less emotional pressure." So they pull back emotionally, but keep the connection open just enough to feel secure. That's why it feels so unfair. So you stay, because technically nothing ended. There's no clear breakup, no final conversation, no clean line. So you stay hopeful. You tell yourself, they're stressed, they're busy, they just need time. And sometimes that's true. But when it becomes a pattern, it's not temporary. It's their relationship style. This is the moment people start self-abandoning. Watch how subtle this is. You start doing things like talking less about your needs, lowering expectations, accepting delayed replies, being understanding all the time. You call it love, but really, you're adjusting to their disconnection. And the more you adjust, the less incentive they have to reconnect emotionally. Can you see how that loop forms? The hardest truth. If someone can disconnect emotionally without feeling the loss of you, they weren't fully attached. They were connected, yes. Bonded, maybe. Comforted, definitely. But attached? That shows up when distance hurts them too. And in this dynamic, it usually doesn't. You're not crazy for feeling this deeply. I need you to hear this. You're not too much. You're not needy. You're not imagining the shift. You're responding normally to emotional inconsistency. Anyone would. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's reacting to instability. So what's the lie here? The lie is this. If I just stay calm enough, patient enough, low maintenance enough, they'll come back emotionally. But emotional disconnection and avoidance isn't solved by waiting. It's how they stay comfortable. And comfort is their priority. not intimacy. All right. Same seat, same calm, honest energy. This is chapter 2, and this is where the paradox really shows up. Chapter 2. They didn't leave. So why does it feel like they did? Okay, here's the part that confuses everyone. You think, if they're still here, if they haven't replaced me, if they haven't moved on, then they must care, right? And honestly, that makes sense. Here's what I think. Avoidants can stay loyal while being emotionally unavailable. Yeah, both at the same time. And that's what keeps people stuck. So let's talk about loyalty first. Avoidants don't always replace people quickly. In fact, a lot of them stay emotionally single for a long time. Keep old connections alive. Don't fully invest elsewhere. From the outside, that looks like, see, I mattered. And you did. But loyalty doesn't equal attachment. Loyalty for avoidance often means, I don't want disruption, not, I want deeper connection. Can you feel the difference? Why they don't replace you easily. This part surprises people. Avoidants don't hop from person to person easily, because every new bond requires emotional energy. And emotional energy feels risky. So instead of replacing you, they keep you at a distance. Maintain minimal connection. Avoid starting something new. It's safer. You're familiar. Predictable. Low effort. Now, that's not romance. That's emotional conservation. This is where hope sneaks in. You tell yourself, if they're not moving on, maybe they'll come back emotionally. But staying emotionally stuck is not the same as moving forward with you. They're paused, not choosing. And waiting on someone who isn't choosing slowly drains you. Avoidants disconnect but don't detach. This is important. Detachment is final. Disconnection is adjustable. Avoidants disconnect emotionally, but keep the door cracked open. Why? Because complete loss feels threatening too. So they balance, not too close, not completely gone. From their side, that feels stable. From your side, it feels like torture. Why their loyalty still hurts? Because loyalty without intimacy feels empty. They don't ask deeper questions, share emotionally, lean on you consistently. They show up just enough to remind you they exist. And every time they do, your nervous system lights up again, hope resets. Can you imagine how exhausting that is? This isn't love the way you experience it. This is the part people avoid admitting. If someone can stay connected without deepening, if they can be loyal without vulnerability, if they can keep you without fully choosing you, that's not the same emotional language you're speaking. You're speaking attachment. They're speaking management. Why talking about it rarely fixes this? You might think, if I explain how I feel, they'll understand. Sometimes they do, but understanding doesn't equal capacity. They might say, I get it, I care, I don't want to lose you. And still, nothing changes? Because the issue isn't awareness, it's nervous system limits, the silent contract you didn't agree to. Without realizing it, this dynamic creates an unspoken deal. You accept less, stay patient, don't push. They stay loosely present. Avoid deep connection, keep emotional distance. And the longer this goes on, the harder it is to break. Because leaving now feels like losing something. Even though you've already been losing it slowly. Let me ask you this. If someone stays, but doesn't meet you emotionally, is that really staying? Or is it just delaying the goodbye? Sit with that. The paradox clearly stated. They didn't leave you, but they also didn't fully stay. And living in that in-between is what hurts the most? All right. Still here. Good. This is chapter 3, and yeah, this is the part where things get a little too real. Chapter 3. Why emotional disconnection creates obsession and why you can't just let go. Okay, let me ask you something first. Have you ever noticed how you weren't this obsessed at the beginning? Like, early on you were fine? Curious maybe? Interested, but okay. And then at some point, your mind started looping. You overthought texts. You reread conversations. You felt anxious waiting for replies. You wondered where you stood. And you thought, what is wrong with me? Here's what I think. Nothing was wrong with you. This is what emotional inconsistency does to a nervous system. Disconnection creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates fixation. Your brain hates open loops. When something is clear, it can relax. When something is unclear, it keeps checking. Avoidants disconnect emotionally without ending the bond. So your brain stays alert. It keeps asking, are we okay? Did I mess up? Are they pulling away or just busy? And because there's no clear answer, your mind keeps returning to them. That's not weakness. That's biology. Why you start chasing without meaning to? Here's the sneaky part. You don't consciously think, I'll chase them. What happens instead is subtle. You reach out a little more. Try to be more understanding. Adjust your tone. Hold back your needs. You're trying to restore connection. And every small sign of warmth from them, it feels huge. Because when connection is scarce, crumbs feel like meals. Can you imagine how that rewires you? The push-pull effect isn't romantic, it's destabilizing. People romanticize push-pull dynamics. They call it chemistry. But chemistry that comes from instability creates anxiety, not intimacy. When they pull away, you ache. When they come back, you feel relief. Your nervous system starts associating them with both pain and comfort. That's how attachment deepens, even when the relationship doesn't. Why you stop trusting yourself? This part hurts. Because over time you start thinking, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I need to chill. But here's the truth. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person. Someone emotionally available doesn't make you doubt your needs. They respond to them. Why you feel worse when they finally go cold? You'd think distance would help. But often when avoidants disconnect more, you feel worse, not better. Why? Because your nervous system never got a clean ending. No closure. No resolution. Just fading. And fading keeps hope alive. This is why no contact feels unbearable at first. It's not because you can't survive without them. It's because your system is detoxing from inconsistency. Your body learned to wait for unpredictable reward. So when it stops, you feel restless, empty, uneasy. That's not love withdrawal. That's nervous system withdrawal. Big difference. The moment people misinterpret this, they think, if it hurts this much, it must be love. But intensity isn't proof of connection. It's proof of dysregulation. Real attachment feels steady. This felt sharp. You didn't fall apart because you were weak. You fell apart because you cared. You stayed open. You kept hoping. In a dynamic that never stabilized. Anyone would struggle there. Here's the reframe that changes everything. The pain isn't coming from losing them. It's coming from finally seeing how disconnected it always was. That realization hits like grief. Because you're not just letting go of a person. You're letting go of the potential, the imagined future, the version of them you hoped would show up. That's heavy. Let me ask you something gently. If emotional connection only happened when you were anxious, quiet, patient, or shrinking, was that really connection? Or was it survival? Sit with that. All right. Last chapter. Stay with me. This is chapter 4, where things finally settle and make sense. Chapter 4, how you actually heal after. Emotional disconnection, and why this is where your power comes back. Okay. If you've listened this far, something in you already shifted. Maybe you're quieter. Maybe you're sad in a different way. Maybe you're not as frantic. That's not giving up. That's acceptance starting to land. Here's what I think. Healing doesn't begin when you stop missing them. It begins when your nervous system stops waiting for them. Why clarity hurts before it soothes? Clarity is uncomfortable at first, because it means admitting they didn't leave, but they weren't really here either. That realization can feel heavier than a clean breakup, but it also stops the internal argument. No more. Maybe if I tried harder, maybe if I stayed calmer, maybe if I waited longer. You finally stop negotiating with reality. And that's relief, even if it feels raw. You don't need closure from them. I know people hate hearing this. But closure doesn't come from another conversation. It comes from understanding the pattern. Once you see, they disconnect under intimacy. They regulate through distance. They stay loyal but unavailable. There's nothing left to decode. Their behavior already answered the question. Why your nervous system needs safety, not answers. You didn't get attached because of words. You got attached because of inconsistency. So healing isn't about insight alone. It's about stability. Your system needs predictability, emotional presence, clear responses. That's how obsession fades. Not through willpower, through safety. What letting go actually looks like. Letting go isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It looks like not checking your phone as much, not rereading old messages, not wondering what they're thinking, not because you don't care, but because your body feels steadier. That's the real sign of healing. Why you must stop romanticizing emotional distance. This part matters. If you tell yourself, they're just avoidant, they're wounded, they can't help it, you stay stuck. Understanding explains behavior. It doesn't excuse impact. You're allowed to want consistency, emotional availability, mutual effort. That's not asking for too much. That's asking for attachment, not breadcrumbs. Your new standard, and it's simple. You're not looking for intensity anymore. You're looking for emotional response, repair after distance, presence under stress, someone who doesn't disconnect when it gets real. That's it. No fireworks required. One last thing I want you to hear. You didn't lose someone who was capable of meeting you. You lost someone who stayed without fully showing up, and losing that, it hurts. But it also frees you from confusion. So if you're grieving right now, good. Grief means the illusion broke. And when the illusion breaks, you stop chasing people who disappear emotionally. That's not bitterness. That's growth. All right. That's it. What do you think? Does this explain why it hurt the way it did? If it does, sit with it. Clarity always comes before peace. And you're closer than you think? If this explains something you couldn't put into words, save it.